Hey everybody, Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant. I'm here at NAB East 2016 with Tim Smith, Senior Advisor, Film and Television Production. Did I get that right, Tim?
You did.
At Canon. It is a mouthful, so we're expecting big things. And sitting between us is Canon's recently announced C700, the top of the Cinema EOS line.
Clearly. It's a camera that we've been working on for 5 years.
5 years?
We actually entered the cinema business 5 years ago on November 3rd, was our announcement that we were getting into the cinema business. We brought the camera out on November 3rd in Los Angeles to the AC Clubhouse and showed it to the members first. This is the second place in the United States that it's been available. But we've evolved through our HD product and our C300, which was our first piece, then the C100, then the C300 Mark II, where we went into the 4K world, and we played with the C500 in the middle, which was a 4K camera externally. All of them small, interesting designs that really fit well into like the independent film work or reality TV or doc work, but not that conventional design that you could get on a major motion picture. So that's what this one is.
The first thing that occurs to me when I hear major motion picture is global shutter.
Yes.
Does the C700 have one?
There'll be 3 flavors of the 700. There's the 700 EF, which will be the EF mount for our still lenses. There'll be a PL version as well. And then I think we're talking about February or so for the global shutter version.
Gotcha.
Also, it's modular. So if I did have the EF version or the PL version, I can take it into Canon service and have them put in the global shutter version.
Can they also switch the mounts?
The mounts are also switchable, yes. So PL to EF is all very flexible. All of that is now being done just by us, but in the future it may be done at the prep houses and things as well, but after a training period. The only thing about the global shutter thing that you need to know is you lose 1 stop of latitude. So it's a camera that has 15 stops of latitude as is. If you move to the global shutter, you'll pick up global shutter, you'll lose the latitude.
All right, now in order to get those 15 stops, setting aside the global shutter for a minute, we're talking about log shooting. And there are several versions of log on this camera.
Right, you've got the original log, you've got Canon Log 2 and Canon Log 3, all serving different purposes. For the most information, the most dynamic range, Log 2. We'll give you that most amount of information, but we don't always suggest Log 2. You're still going to get the 15 stops, but there's just the color grade session goes much easier in Log 3. If it's a simple production, if it's you don't have a ton of money on the budget side, you're not going to have a lot of that, I would say go with Log 3. If you really have time to dig out what you want in the darks and bring the lights down, then go into Log 2.
Very, very interesting.
The only time for Log 1 if you want to match a C300 Mark II.
There's an interesting discussion on the web among several people who I regard very highly in the DP world, some of whom say, yeah, you can shoot log in low light, and other people say that's ridiculous. The only time to really take advantage of log is when you're trying to reduce a wide dynamic range, which you're going to get with bright light and with deep shadows. You have a take on that?
Yeah.
No names, no names.
Shoot wide in low light. Shoot the wide dynamic range in low light. Give yourself that option. One of the things that's sort of the nature of a Canon sensor all the way to the C300 is if you're protecting for the highlights, you can trust the blacks, they're there. You can dig out just about everything out of the shadows. Just don't break the top. Once it's
over 100 IRE,
there's nothing to pull back. And not all cameras work that way. Sometimes 110 IRE still has information in it. When we hit that, actually I would say 92 IRE in Log 2. 92 is the new 100 on this. Once you've broken that 92 IRE, your information is pretty much gone. But the bottom end of it, based on the curve, 92 is really the max.
Well, guys, one of the things that I said to Tim before we started shooting is I wasn't going to ask any terrible questions, but I was going to ask real questions.
Okay.
And we also said that we weren't going to get too much into the specs because really the thing that's interesting to me, and the reason why I call this a conversation as opposed to an interview, is because I think it's more interesting to understand what was Canon's thinking behind bringing out this camera, because now with a price for the body alone of closing in on 30 grand, you're competing against some very heavy iron.
We are.
So I'd like to understand what Canon's thinking was and how Canon positions the C700 as offering a unique package of opportunities.
There are a lot of cameras out there in the expensive price point. Not all of them hit every spec that's necessary. For sake of conversation, let's talk about Netflix for a second. Netflix is giving their filmmakers a 4K mandate. And they will not accept content that is not created in 4K. So we have other competitors like Arri, which is a major player in this industry, and they make a fantastic camera. They don't make a 4K camera.
2K.
2K. I have a 3.2, but even up-resing is not allowed under the Netflix mandate.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're very specific about that. With the logic being that they're selling a 4K product and they're charging for a 4K product, they need it to be a 4K product. Amazon, which is not as strict with the rules, is though following suit in a lot of cases with what the Netflix standards would be, because that's their competition. And another thing to think about is that Netflix has publicly announced that they're spending $6 billion on production in 2017.
How much?
$6 billion, after spending almost that much in 2016.
Let me ask you that again. How much?
$6 billion. Variety announced it, it's public knowledge. But to put that in perspective, in Hollywood where I live, that is probably more than all the major studios combined.
That number is, I believe the technical term is ginormous.
Ginormous. It's
okay.
Huge.
So this is fascinating because your response to me was less about other cameras than it was about the market that you're choosing to serve. Very good point.
I think this camera is the sort of the right camera at the right time, because they need a camera like this in that environment.
So I guess you're saying that the C700 shoots true 4K, DCI 4K, not just UHD?
Technically 4.5.
Okay, so you're doing a little...
when you go to the, it's not mounted on here, but Codex has manufactured an integrated recorder that fits onto the back, and with the Codex recorder I can go to 4.5K in RAW.
Okay, so you have RAW capability through an add-on recorder.
Right.
When you're shooting internally, what is the highest quality that you can shoot at?
I can still shoot 4K 12-bit color space, compressed. But RAW, I'm going to go to the recorder. So
12-bit
12-bit color space, which is huge. Yeah, ProRes, huge. Or there's actually several choices. ProRes is one of the choices. You can do XFAVC as well. So,
interesting.
Yeah,
really interesting. Now, one of the knocks on, and again, it's not a terrible question, but it's a fair question. One of the knocks on the other Cinema EOS cameras is that they don't have the higher shutter speeds that Sony has. What does this camera do in that regard? 240
frames a second.
At what resolution?
Even in 4K to the recorder. Now, without the recorder to the cards, let's take it back. To get to 240, I window it, or I go down to 2K, but I can get to 240. To get to 120 in full 4K, I can go to the compressed to the cards, or I can go RAW up to 100 at 120. So there's a huge amount of frame rates in here. There's another really, since it's conversational, but anamorphic, which is our first chance to do this. This camera will also take anamorphic glass and do a 2.0 squeeze or a 1.3 squeeze. So the sensor is set to go with anamorphic. And that's becoming really popular.
So you're really aiming high. Your ambition is to really be the camera of choice for the hot distribution medium right now, which is online.
Which is online. And I do see this living in the feature film market, more so than our C300 did. 300 is in a lot of films. It's a B camera. It's an A camera from time to time. This clearly is an A camera all the time. It's not something that you bring in an extra one for. This is the A camera. Gotcha. But that's not to say that the 300 hasn't been the A camera. We have a TV series on Netflix called Grace and Frankie, which is Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin.
I know it.
C300 Mark II, only camera. Transparent is one of the biggest shows on Amazon, C300 Mark II. So, and it's the only camera. So we are A camera in certain environments with those cameras. But we kind of complement either the Reds or the Aries as a B camera on other ones. That's not going to be the case with this one.
All right, so you're competing head-to-head with Arri and Red to be the A camera for the hottest segment.
It is a
of the
position
industry
that we want, and you know, it's not the largest segment. We're already doing well in the largest segment. But we want that too.
You raise a very interesting point. Now, this is something that is happening across camera manufacturers who have a consumer line as well, which is interchangeable lens camera unit volumes have been cratering for a couple of years. And every one of you, in order to come close to maintaining the profitability that you've had, has got to get to higher margin products. It's like General Motors or Detroit, where what you really want to do is sell a loaded SUV, I guess. But it looks like you're going to make sure that this SUV is giving people what they want at the very top.
True, and the other thing to think about though is that we're a lens company. So other manufacturers that are making cameras, and cameras hit a saturation mark early in technology, lenses don't do that. When we produce a lens, it's produced for 25 years. It's incredibly profitable. If you're a camera manufacturer that doesn't produce glass, there's a lot of profit that doesn't get poured back into it again. It's sort of a razor and the blades kind of thing.
Yeah, damned expensive blades.
Yes.
But I hear you. I absolutely hear you. Which raises another question. I was a Canon user since the time I was 12, and recently I shifted to another brand, which for this particular episode shall remain nameless. But one of the reasons why I did is because I felt my beautiful L glass was getting long in the tooth when I wanted to move to video. Now, you have a line of dedicated Cine lenses,
yeah, we do.
and you have some incredible high-end lenses. But you've talked about still lenses on this camera, and in fact, what are we looking at? A PL mount lens right here?
This is EF actually, but it comes in a PL as well.
Okay. So my question to you in this razors and blades discussion is there a reimagining? Is there a set of plans to redefine these still lenses so that they can pull double duty?
You mean with the mount systems?
With these video cameras. So in other words, right now, they're fly-by-wire. Same thing as any other lens company, but other manufacturers are beginning to allow true manual focus. Some of them are beginning to put Cine gears. You've got companies like Sigma, which are dedicated lens companies, and I just wanted to get your thought on that.
So over the last 5 years, we have also got into the cinema lens business.
Right.
We now have a full set of cinema primes. We have 2 beautiful compact zooms, 2 very large and very profitable and expensive zooms as well. We also offer this one, which is a 17 to 120 E&G zoom. These are all within the last 5 years that are cinema based. And we even produced a lens for the ages. It's a 50 to 1000 zoom.
Yeah.
That's a crazy lens.
That is a crazy lens.
And it's in the $70,000 range. But we're heavily invested in cinema glass as well. And those, with the exception of the primes, all of those zooms come as either EF or PL and can be interchanged.
Right. Now, all of those lenses are manual focus geared.
No motors, are all typical conventional Cine design.
Right. Now, on the other hand, in the C300 Mark II, C300, C100, C100 Mark II, dual pixel autofocus is a big selling point, which can only be used with the still lenses. So, a couple of questions. One, does dual pixel autofocus exist on this camera?
In the EF version it will. Obviously not in the PL version. But in the EF version you do have the dual pixel autofocus, yes.
So let me circle back to this. Is there an intention in Canon to develop EF autofocus lenses which can take advantage of dual pixel AF, but at the same time be easily used for nice, clean, manual focus pulls? Because right now, I would argue that that's not what the...
Yeah, and it's a fair argument, and it's correct, actually. It's a technical challenge to make an autofocus lens that's also truly a manual focus lens, the way it's geared, the way things have to move, so that's been a bit of an issue. We have an 18 to 80 cinema zoom that's sort of our first hybrid.
And this is, the coverage is for a Super 35?
For a Super 35. And it's starting to ship soon. We announced it earlier this year. It's actually like one camera over. And that sort of is our first step into a reasonably priced, which is also what it has to be. I mean, this is in the $30,000 range. I'm talking about something in the $6,000 range, because you also have to hit that price point for that customer. That does give you manual control and auto control. It's not going to perform at the level of this spec-wise, but it will function on the level that you're asking it for. So it's going to have to be the right tool for the right job to that point. So, and the other interesting thing is, I mean, we have, I think we're over 100 million, like 118 million EF lenses have been sold, which is enormous. And all of those will fit there. Oh, it's a crazy number. And I think there's about 60 or 65 currently available.
And EFS fits as well.
EFS fits
because
as well.
It's got the same coverage.
Right, EFS is really set for Super 35 coverage. The other ones are full frame, so they'll deal with it.
And the EFS come with the STM technology, which is faster and quieter than the traditional Canon autofocus.
Some, not across the board, but some are STMs as well, and it is faster and quieter. But the dual autofocus it's the first time I've ever really endorsed autofocus as a function that could be used in a cinema environment. And it really can be. The reality stuff and news stuff, absolutely, but it can, the way I would use it, I don't leave it on. I use the one touch. And I use it to quickly get me where I have to go, and then I go back to manual. Or I use the one touch button, which will nail it, and then take my finger off. So as long as the subject stays within that same range, so I have used it in that case, and I could lock on a tracking shot from a mile, and it just holds it. It's beautifully done. It's really well done technology. So I would like to see, kind of taking over the interview for a second, I think that we have a way...
Conversation.
I think we have a way to, down the road, take this autofocus technology without being autofocus, but integrate it into the cameras as a focus assist technology.
That's interesting.
That is to me, because even with the cinema lenses, that autofocus technology exists at the sensor level. So if it's telling me the distance between me and the subject, whether the lens is moving or not, that would be valuable information that would have. And one of the things you can do as you're turning one of the manual lenses is you see these green lights tell you you're in or out.
Like the old days of exposure meters.
And all of a sudden you're in,
the two arrows?
And then you're dead on. And that could be used in an autofocus environment as well. So I think there's a lot of potential to that sensor, not going back to the still lenses, but going into the cinema lenses.
That's very clever. Now, I said that we really weren't going to get into specs, but I know you want to talk about them a little bit.
Yeah.
So what are the 3 or 4 things that you're most proud of? And
I mean, we talked about the frame rates, because those are...
Yes, you did.
And I don't know if I'm most proud of, but they're the most fun thing on the camera. 240 frames. We've got a film which you can watch that we shot a demo film with this. We used a cinematographer named Russell Carpenter. He got the Academy Award for Titanic. He's one of the best there is.
You were kind of skimping on the budget with getting him on.
Russell's a friend, and he wanted to use it. And one of the things he loved most on this was the high frame rate. There's a lot more high frame rate in that final film that when you watch it than was really intended. But that's what lit his buttons up. That's what excited him, and it excited us as well. That was really fun. So we did a lot of that. The dynamic range, the 15 stops. The anamorphic, which is completely new for us. And anamorphic's being used in a traditional way where you go to see an anamorphic film, but a lot of television right now is using anamorphic and then slicing it into a 16:9 and not delivering it in the anamorphic ratio, but giving that same anamorphic bokeh and so that look of anamorphic. That's very popular now. The Alexa Mini did that
on Netflix,
but in 16:9.
Yep.
So if I want to do it in Lawrence of Arabia, I go to that full anamorphic and I show it that way. But you can take shows like Criminal Minds International, which Rodney Charter shoots. They use the Alexa Minis, the 4.3 sensor, and shoot all anamorphic, but deliver it as 16:9. There's a lot of information they're throwing away, but he's getting that anamorphic look inside that screen, which he really loves. And that'll be the kind of thing you could do with this as well.
I have to say, as someone who is not the target market for this, but someone who understands industrial design really well, props for the lit buttons, which actually tell you what's on them so you can see them when it's on a dark set.
So the goal of the 700 was to make it a hefty camera in terms of functionality, but not complicated. So everything we can do in this camera can sort of be programmed in or out. Everything button you see with a number on it can either be the button it's designed for or something else. It can be reprogrammed. The menu system, which you would see through the viewfinder on a monitor, has been reduced to the basics of what you would need here, like frame rate and shutter speed and white balance, color space, and all of those are sort of done at the touch of a button. Back. And back. So you can change everything just right there. All of this, by the way, is duplicated on the other side as well. So the first AC can actually access it, even when it's up on the operator's shoulder. But it's all very simple and right there. Record button is here. This may seem like a little thing, but it was one of the things that I just couldn't get off our list. This is a rosette. This is a separate base, which you can buy, but they built in a rosette on this for handles, universal just about anything. That made a huge difference. It's very easy to get this on your shoulder. Just rosette handles and it's up and on. The battery system is the one it's going to come with will be the V-Lock, which is fairly common industry. If you buy the Codex recorder, that will be a gold mount, an Anton Bauer gold mount. Anton is also now making V-Locks, so they're industry standard batteries. It's an industry standard cable in order to go to power systems, so onto the blocks. It just works inside what we already work in. Everything can be illuminated here or shut off if you don't want them off, like they are now. They are illuminated so you can see them. But also that information is duplicated in there too, depending on us to see it. So it's really easy to see. The power system is an industry standard. You're using Anton Bauers, you're using V-Locks. The LEMO connectors to run power are there. Everything is an industry standard. So I've been for 5 years working on C300 projects and C300 Mark II projects, which meant 10 different widgets to make it all come together if you didn't want to just go out of the box. Now everything in this is something you would pick up at a regular rental house. Sure. And just put it on. The other thing they did was, swing this around a little bit so you can see the other pretty side, this is an accessory which comes on and off. Your CFast cards would go in here.
Okay.
But when this is on, everything on the dumb smart side is also on the dumb side. Nice. And I can pull this away, which has come in really handy.
What exists as far as wireless capability with this?
There's right here would exist a wireless transmitter. That will give you a lot of functionality in terms of run, stop, and seeing the image. There is, to be fair, there's a lag in the image. It's not really.
What is the protocol that you're using?
It's a Wi-Fi protocol.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and you'll just tap into that.
But there is a latency issue.
There's a latency issue from that one. It's not like a Bolt or a transmitter, which gives you real time.
Right.
You're really using it to view the image. But if I'm up on a crane or a jib and I decide, you know what, they want 2 stops of neutral density, I can do that through an iPad app. Or my exposure's off and all that kind of thing. So.
Great point. I want to cover that as well. The use of smartphones or tablets as a control mechanism for this kind of camera. How sophisticated is the app? This is fascinating. We're talking about an app with a $30,000 camera.
I should probably not even call it an app because you're actually going to essentially you're logging into a website. So it's really not app-based. It's a locked-out base between the two, but
so that's a round trip. That's a big round trip. There's more of your latency.
It's all right there. Yeah. It would allow me to exposure, shutter speed, filters. If in fact I had one of the autofocus lenses on it, change my focus.
Touch autofocus?
Yeah. You know, essentially what I can do in the camera, I can do from the iPhone or the iPad or the Android or whatever, because I'm just going to a URL. What else will it do? I can do some playback. You know, if I wanted to see it, there's some latency playback, but in playback it's not a big deal. But if I really wanted to check that shot without bringing the crane down,
got it.
I can get up there and into it. So.
One more question before I let you go, because we really monopolized this space. Thank you. What has the reception been to your announcement of this camera?
Overwhelmingly good. You know,
good answer. Good answer.
I mean, we always do pretty well. We've got a lot of fans. But it always seems that the day after the announcement, and I read the blogs or that somebody finds something legitimate to pick at. A great camera, but, or I'm not seeing any of that. So far, it's hitting on everybody's wish list. Nobody's come back and said, "What are you thinking, Canon?" There's 5 years in this, and it's very well thought out. Every touch point up here, every place to screw something in, touch points on the bottom, industry standard batteries, more inputs and outputs than you'll know what to do with. It's hitting all, and then this finder, which is sold separately, it's about $6,000.
$6,000 for the finder.
So I think we're probably, you know, price-wise, I think you're in the, by all in, probably 35, 38,000, I guess. This is spectacular.
You want to share some specs on this?
Well, it's an HD monitor, but the color and the functionality of it, with the menu systems being driven from here as well, so I can engage an ND filter without even taking my eye away from the cup.
It will be very interesting to see just how well that's thought out.
Yeah.
I've got a theme in my thinking that we've gotten so much capabilities from so many cameras, but the cost has been that the capabilities actually get in the way of capturing the shot. If Henri Cartier-Bresson, a still photographer for the most part, were alive today, I swear he'd be using an iPhone. but that's another story for another time. Anyway, Tim, it's a delight to meet you. I want to thank you for taking the time, and I wish you all the best with this.
Thank you, thank you.
For Three Blind Men and an Elephant, I'm Hugh Brownstone. See you next time. If you like what you've seen here, thumbs up, subscribe. Happy if you use our links, although I don't think there'll be that many people in my audience who are going to purchase this. Renting it, something else.
Oh, it definitely plays as a rental, but you know what? Look up The Calling, C700 The Calling. That's the name of the film we shot in Colorado with Russell. Either link to that if you can, or go see it. It's on YouTube, it's on Vimeo, or on the Canon site. It'll give you a real sense of what this camera can do.